one thing that consistently gets talked about all of the time, whether it's today or 10 years from now, is just the advice that always comes through is just paying attention to where the money's going and how to utilize it in the best fashion based on your personal values, your family values. If you can think about that and analyze that, you'll be ahead of so many people and help your personal life go in a great direction.
Welcome to Multiple Perspectives. I'm David Lofgren.
And I'm Daniel Brereton.
Daniel, I've been thinking about what happens when the sort of like conventional path to financial success starts to feel like a trap. You know, there's been this like pervasive narrative that success means maximizing your earnings, maxing out your 401k, grinding through a 40-year corporate career until you can finally retire in your 60s or 70s even, with enough money to enjoy your quote-unquote golden years. But I feel like at a certain point, some folks realize that there's a paradox in this approach, which is that by the time you've accumulated enough wealth to sort of buy your freedom, you might have sacrificed the very years that you had the energy and health to fully enjoy that freedom. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's that classic delayed gratification, right? You know, you take it to the extreme though. You're essentially betting that 13 years of retirement will be better than potentially decades of an intentional living during your prime earning years.
Exactly. And that led me to this conversation that I'm about to share with you with Andy Hill. He's the creator of Marriage, Kids, and Money, and the author of an upcoming book, Own Your Time. He's someone who has achieved a form of financial independence in his early 40s, not by maximizing wealth accumulation, but by doing something that I don't think we talk about much in traditional financial planning. He and his wife deliberately chose to step off of the sort of optimization treadmill and reclaim their time while they still had young kids at home.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting though, because I just wonder if this approach is replicable. Maybe it's just available to people who have reached a certain income threshold. Like, is this wisdom or is it privilege? You know, what's the balance there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a worthwhile question, and Andy will address some of that. You know, his approach raises some questions about whether we're like optimizing for the right things, I think is how you could explain it. Is it good to have a goal that is reliant upon having the biggest possible nest egg, or is it, okay to sort of design a life that reflects your values while you're actually living it? So it's hard to evaluate whether this kind of intentional downshifting is wisdom or just a luxury available to high earners.
Yeah, and I imagine that there's some industry pushback about this thinking, right? You know, the FIRE movement, fat FIRE, skinny FIRE, live your life. There's a lot of money in keeping people focused on that long-term maximum accumulation. You know, the asset allocators, 401k plans, everyone's got a bit of a vested interest.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Andy will talk about that too. You know, how the sort of financial services industry, corporations, even our sort of consumer-driven economy all benefit from the heads down, work harder narrative. And naturally, as we know, personal finance is deeply personal. Just that. Yeah. So, Andy's journey from corporate event marketing to like part-time content creation isn't just about finances. It's also, I think, about recognizing that the time in your life is the one thing that you can't actually ever save up or get back.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear how he thinks about preparing his kids for this kind of thinking, especially with AI changing the future of everything and, work is changing so rapidly.
Yeah, we'll get into that too. This conversation touches on everything from sort of coast fire strategies, as he calls it, to preparing kids for an AI-driven economy. But, at its core, I think we're really questioning whether the traditional definition of success is still serving us. Andy will talk to us about his philosophy that generational wealth is better transmitted through knowledge than dollars, and why he believes that the cultural narrative of work hard for 40 years might be more sort of myth than wisdom. I think you'll find his perspective on time diversification as compelling as his thoughts on financial diversification.
Let's get into it. I'm happy to hear.
Andy Hill, welcome to Multiple Perspectives.
Thanks for having me, David. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You've built a career sort of helping families achieve financial independence, right? I'm wondering if we can start with just a little bit of background, if you could explain sort of what first drew you to this mission. And I'm also curious if you can talk about why you sort of focus on this idea of like family financial empowerment, why sort of financial independence for families as a unit feels like an important thing.
Sure. Yeah. If I could go back, I would say the reason I started creating content and going on this mission were twofold. The first one would be that I'm a married guy with a couple of kids, and I was seeking information on how to build wealth and happiness for my family. So I thought, what better way to do that than to create a podcast? Because I'm listening to a lot of them right now. I might as well make one of my own where I can share our journey, just our transparent journey on how we're doing, and then interview a bunch of smart people who have built wealth for their family. So, and twofold, probably is a better way to say it. Twofold, I had a corporate job at the time that felt a little restricting to me personally. So I had built my career in corporate event marketing. In my 20s, it was super cool because I got to travel around the country and, let's see a bunch of new places. But then once I got married and I had kids, that ability to work evenings and work weekends wasn't so appealing anymore. So I felt a little stuck though, because I was making six figures doing this career and I was doing really well. And I'm like, well, I have a family to provide for, but I've got this job that I don't really like. And this job is keeping me away from the family. It's like, how do I balance those types of things? So I decided, what could I do to build my wealth so that I could buy back some more of my time or own my time a little bit more? And I started to learn a little bit more about financial independence at that point. And it was right around that time that my boss came up to me and pulled me into his office and said, hey, that team that you've built and this great progress you've been making here, we're going to change everything around now. You don't have that team anymore. Now you're over working on under this guy and you're doing something completely different. So it was at that moment I felt like, man, I don't really have control of my life at this point. I work at a place where they can change things on a dime based on what I'm doing, even though I've made great progress and done really well for them. And then when I come home, I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they definitely own my time when I come home. So I said, I was just at a moment and a point in my life where I'm like, I need to figure out a way where I can grab back more of this time. And I like spending time with my kids and I like spending time with my wife. The corporate thing, that's got to have some changes in the future. So I got motivated at that point to make a little bit of change in my life and create content along that journey to help others who were trying to do the same thing.
Wow, incredible. I imagine that you hear from folks who are, listeners of yours, readers of your content, consumers of sort of this world of information that you're putting out there, that it's meaningful that you're talking about not just sort of, I think a lot of finance talk can be a very kind of self-centered. It's like about you and your money. Uh-huh. But I love the way that you sort of talk about this in the concept of helping families achieve financial independence and being able to refocus your time as a maybe once very busy corporate professional back into this thing that is, sort of all of the people that you care about the most. Like what do you hear from the people who are fans of yours, who are listening to your content, about the importance of that sort of focus on like helping families regain some of their time?
Absolutely. Yeah. The audience that listens to the show is usually married, they have a kid or a couple of kids, or they're thinking about having kids. And it's at that point in their lives where they were single before this and they had maybe a little bit more free time, but then you start adding that spouse on, you add those kids on, and you add the demands of a corporate career, and your time just shrinks down to, hey, wait, I used to go to concerts and I used to be involved in this. I used to volunteer over there. I used to hang out with friends and I had hobbies.
Yeah.
And then it's all So I think the goal of trying to build wealth needs to have purpose, right? It's not just a big shiny number, a net worth number, or a, hey, I cracked this specific area of my net worth. It's like, why are we building wealth? And for me personally, I think it's can be used as a tool to buy back the time that you want to have in your life. And now, if you love your corporate career and it's just the best thing in the world, that's fantastic. That's great. But if you desire some other things in your life, like taking care of your health, spending time with your kids, maybe you have aging parents that you're like, hey, I'd really like to spend some time with my parents that brought me to this world and gave me a good life, or I have a desire to give back in my community. If you have other things that you want to create identities to have, then yeah, taking care of your money, taking care of your finances so that you can buy back more of that time is something that has resonated with me personally. And as I've shared it on the show, a lot of people have felt the same way. And we do that through various aspects: investing, eliminating debt that you have, just being in control of your money and understanding where it's going. And then just slowly but surely buying back more of your time. And you're saying, wow, I have 10 more hours in my life, or I can actually afford to work part-time now. Do I have to have this demanding corporate career anymore? No, maybe I can use my skills and be a consultant and just work 20 hours a week. Wouldn't that be amazing? So things like that pop up. And it's amazing when you get that time back in your life. This is a really new opportunity for you. It's like, well, I better use it wisely. It's like it's a gift, right?
Right.
I mean, so it's a fun conversation to have.
Right. Yeah. I love the way that you frame this as not just sort of wealth building for the sake of wealth building, right? It's like how you're thinking about finance and money as a tool in order to empower you to make choices. It's like, it's really more about being in control of the choices that you're making, rather than it is just sort of like stacking a pile of money. It's like, no. This is about shaping your life in the way so that it reflects the values that you hold. I wonder, I think this seems like such a beautiful and amazing idea. And also, I think a lot of people probably hear this and go, yeah, that's nice. That's sweet.
Of course, yeah.
This guy must have something he's not telling us, because,
Sure.
it's really easy to get sucked into the 9 to 5, the rat race, the corporate job, the sort of many of us have been told stories our whole lives that this is the path. This is the path to, being happy or to sort of being successful. So how do you help people reframe the way that they think about their lives or success or their goals or whatever, what have you, in order to realize that, maybe they can take a little more control, or maybe there's a path that wasn't the one that, they've been told about all these years?
I think that a lot of times maybe it's part of our culture that we just, put our heads down and work hard. That's an American ideal. And I think that's great. There are times for that, and you got to get things done. But that can be taken to an extreme, in my opinion, when it comes to the 40-year corporate career, where you're like, if I just put my head down, work very hard for 40 years, continue to get, climb that corporate ladder and gain growth in my salary, then at the end of this rainbow, life's going to be fantastic when I retire. It's going to be great when I retire. The problem is people are retiring in their 60s, right? And the average American lifespan is 78 years old. So you are putting a lot in that bet of saying, when I retire at 65, the next 13 years of my life maybe are going to be fantastic. But what we're missing in that equation is you might not have the physical ability that you had in your 30s or 40s to enjoy life as much. So if you've got your head down working so hard and crushing it for 40 years, I think we're ignoring that happiness could be had today. And you can do that by paying attention to your money a little bit more, putting a lot more away for investments early on so that you can buy back more of your time early and maybe experience a little bit of that freedom and enjoyment that you're hoping for in your 60s maybe in your 30s or 40s. And then you are more physically able, you are spending more time with people, you're not putting off the joy for a potential opportunity in your 60s. It's sad. And I know you've maybe heard these stories too, David, where people retire and then a couple of years later they get cancer and die. And it's like, it's so sad to hear that, the delayed gratification of just going too far with that can be sad. So I just like to offer an alternative. It's an alternative. It's a very countercultural, but what can we do to take advantage of our corporate career for 10, 15, 20 years and be very diligent about how we use that resource, but do it in a way where we are buying back our time so that we can enjoy more of it early on and for a longer period of time.
Now, do you feel like people need to be more frugal in order to achieve this, that they need to sort of change the way that they think about using their resources? You talk a lot about sort of buying back your time, and I wonder if you can just explain what you mean by how you actually sort of direct your these financial tools that you have in order to gain time.
Sure,
now.
Absolutely. Well, I can use our personal example, and I would say, with regard to your comment on frugal can be a double-edged sword. People can think that I got to be really cheap in order to like do what he's talking about. You could also change that word to intentional. Hey, you're making $150,000 a year or $300,000, whatever you're making. That's fantastic. Now, can you utilize some of that to create wealth and time freedom early on so that you can enjoy more of it? So, for example, my wife and I have been investing for our retirement, our traditional retirement, for 10, 15 years together combined. We got to a point at age 40 where we had about $500,000 in our investment accounts. And at that point, we said, this is fantastic. We're on a great track. Now, if we keep doing what we're doing and have 2 full-time jobs, this could turn into $6 million or some big number like that. And then we sort of did the math and said, well, do we need $6 million? If inflation adjusted, do we need $6 million to live comfortably for potentially 13 years or 20 years or 30 years, God willing, keep living a little longer. That's great. Or do we just need enough to enjoy the life we're living now and maybe a little bit more of comfort in our 60s? And the answer was really the second one. So with that knowledge, we said, well, what if we just pared back the amount we're investing towards retirement or even stopped completely? What would that do? Well, actually, it still gets us to around $2.5 million, $2.5 million. And with a safe withdrawal rate, that's plenty for us to live on in retirement in our golden years. And so then that spurred another question of like, well, if we don't need to make as much and we don't need to invest as much, then can we work less? And we found out, yes, we could. So now both of us decided to go part-time in our work lifestyles. We both left the corporate 9 to 5 and said, hey, let's experiment with this 20-hour work week, 25-hour work week, and see what that can do for us. By buying back 20 hours, 15 hours in our week, could we invest more of that in our marriage? Could we invest more of that with our kids who are preteens or, as they're growing up? Could we invest more of that on our health so that we have a longer lifespan and health span so we can actually enjoy our lives more? And that's been a fun experiment that we've been on for, it's about 4 years now, and we're both really enjoying it. It's been a great change from where we were when we were both working very busy jobs with young kids and didn't have a lot of time to connect. This moment in our lives, wasn't great for our health, wasn't great for our marriage. We definitely got some support from marriage counseling during that time frame to help us connect and keep our marriage strong. It wasn't great for connecting with my kids and making memories with them. So I desired more of those things in my life, and so did my wife. So we thought this path, coast fire, we like to call it. We've heard that term out there in the fire world, that you can essentially get to a point with your investments and let them coast until you get to your fire number. And then during that time, you can buy back a little bit more of your time.
Interesting. Coast fire. So that's for those who are unaware of this term, FIRE, of course, is financial independence, retire early. That's sort of the umbrella community and concept that incorporates all of these sort of different methods of trying to, as you say, buy back some of your time or sort of structure your life in a way that gives you more independence. Coast, meaning that you sort of work a certain amount in order to sort of set yourself on a trajectory and then coast?
Yeah. Like, so for example, we'll do that math. So we got $500,000 at age 40. And if you say like a 7% real rate of return and not adding anything for the next 20 years, this could be around $2 million. So you're coasting with that amount in the stock market. Let's call it, general US stock market, S&P 500,
Sure.
growing, getting to a point of $2 million potentially by the time you get to retirement. And that's an epiphany moment where you look at it and you can say, that's doable. And so far, when we've bet on this, we'll say about 4 years ago, it's worked fine for us. We've slowed down or completely stopped our contributions towards retirement, and now we have at 43 around $750,000 in our retirement. So it's continuing to grow. It's continuing to compound. The dividends are reinvesting, and we're continuing to grow our portfolio. So if this continues to grow as we project or hope to, then we'll be completely fine. And in the meantime, we're enjoying more of our lives today.
Sure. Okay. So, and that's like inside of your sort of traditional retirement account, or maybe it's a Roth account, but the sort of the structure that we think of as you have a W-2 job, you invest in your retirement, right?
Exactly.
Are you guys like also aggressively investing in other ways? Is there another facet of this that you're thinking, okay, we've got our retirement account, maybe that's tax advantaged, or we sort of understand exactly how that's going to play out when we can access it. But is there another facet of this sort of independence that you've achieved that involves, sometimes people talk about financial independence and sort of gaining time, but in the background you realize that they're actually spending 20 hours a week, trading stocks or trying to figure out, how to sort of like game some sort of crypto scheme so that they can like make outsized returns. Are you doing this stuff too? Is this part of the plan?
No, the only extra time that I'm spending is that 20 to 25 hours a week growing my small business. So my small business is a financial education company, and I create podcasts, YouTube videos, goofy Instagram reels, things like that, where I'm trying to educate people on personal finance. And I found a way to make money doing that. I make about $90,000 a year doing that at this point. I made about double that in corporate America, but I also worked double the amount of time. And so I'm very happy with this exchange at this point in my life. My wife works as an esthetician, so she went back to school to try something completely new because corporate America didn't really work for her. And so now she works part-time as an esthetician at a dermatologist down the street here. So that's what we do.
That's so cool. And I imagine that being a content creator and a coach, it allows you to sort of structure your day, your week in a way that works with whatever your kids' schedules, your vacations, your...
Absolutely. Yeah. I like the term solopreneur. It's a one-person business, on purpose, really. Like, I could try to, take it to the moon and go to 8 figures or whatever. And it's just like, at this point in my life, I really just want to make the amount of money that I need in order to enjoy our lives and have some of the comforts of going on vacation and sending our kids to summer camp and soccer fees and things like that. But really, that's all we need at this point. So I could work a lot more, could work more hours each week. But now I've filtered other things into my life outside of work that provide me a lot of joy. I like exercising as much as I do each week. I like being connected with my friends again and having fun. I like visiting my dad on Fridays and going for a walk with him in his late 70s, just, being with him and talking with him. These are things that I can't remove from my life anymore because I like them too much. Yes, I could make more money, but for what? I've emptied out my glass jar per se and filled it back up with the important rocks in my life family, health, my parents, spending time with my kids. And now that those rocks are in there, I don't have as much time to put in the pebbles of work. I've got enough to fit in about 20 to 25 hours a week, and that's all I've got left. So
Right. Right. Incredible. It seems like you've sort of identified this. It's almost like a myth of success or of finance, where it's like you need to be contributing, like maxing out your 401k for 30, 40 years in order to, as you say, sort of, have as much money as possible to spend in the last 10 years of your life. Do you feel like there are other sort of myths or narratives that have been told to us over and over again that you've been able to identify and turn on their head?
Oh man. I would say, yeah, leaning into that is there's a lot that goes into that too, because I think when you think about that narrative of put your head down, work hard, build your wealth, you start to think about the industries that perpetuate that myth too. Okay, so let's think about just general investing in general. There's a lot of money that goes into investing. So wouldn't that narrative want to continue that maximizing the amount of wealth you have while you're on this planet is the most admirable attribute? Okay, so that's investing companies. Corporations, I'm sure they'd really like us all to put our heads down and work for as long as possible so that we continue to maximize wealth for our country. 70% of our GDP is based on consumerism here in the country. So of course, that narrative will continue to make it into the lexicon of our language of like, work hard, get your head down and keep working.
Right.
There's not a lot of industries that are supporting the message that I'm talking about. You could stop investing. You could take a break there. You could pay off your mortgage. You could, like these things that help you buy back more of your time, own more of your time. There's no industry that doesn't want you to have a mortgage. There's no industry that wants you to slow down investing. But I think that countercultural message of slowing down, maybe doing less, is a little bit what our country needs right now.
Wow. Well, there is an industry. It's your solopreneur industry at Marriage, Kids, and Money, right?
Marriage, Kids, and Money, right? I'm booming, baby. No, it's good.
A singular voice in the noise.
Absolutely. I like it.
I wonder if, you can talk a little bit about, like, there's this narrative, there's this idea that, as a father, you have kids and they're going to learn about how to live their life from your example and your wife's example, right? That they're going to sort of have an eye on you guys and go, okay, what am I supposed to do with my life? How am I supposed to live? Yeah. And there are a lot of people out there that would say, the best thing you can do is show them what really hard work looks like. What like doing the 40-hour work, 60-hour work week, whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Putting tons of money in savings. And there are discussions about sort of generational wealth, the way that you could think about trying to create a financial legacy for your children. And I'm wondering how you think about the idea of sort of work ethic or, generational wealth in the context of the lifestyle that you and your wife have developed for yourselves and for your kids.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I believe that generational wealth is better imparted through knowledge and actually showing your kids the way, as opposed to dropping a bunch of money on their laps and saying good luck. That's one. It's shown in many ways as well. There was a study done. I'm going to mess up the specific details, but it shows that generational wealth fades over time, and it makes sense, because if something is just given to you and you don't have to work as hard for it, then you're not going to be as motivated to keep it alive. So I think they said the generational wealth fades by 70% after like the third generation or something like that. And it continues to grow even as those generations go by. And there's lots, whether that's true or not, it's like a really big a thing that you see in multiple countries, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, rice patties to rice patties in 3 generations, things like that. And it's all over the world. But to your point on my kids maybe watching me doing what I'm doing, I would say that I would love to impart the knowledge of life, not just having a rich life through monetary value, but also having a rich life through relationships, a rich life through knowledge, a rich life through taking care of your body and your health. And having that diverse life is really the generational wealth that I want to impart on my kids, and showing them that if you put all of your eggs in one basket of one corporate job or one corporation, and this will be the best thing for you, that person has never experienced a layoff when you had all of the work that you put in there, and you put everything else to aside. Your health was put aside, your marriage was put aside, your time with your children was put aside, but then that company said goodbye to you anyway. It's not your family. Even though that sometimes happens in corporations, we say, we're all family. They're not.
What's the saying? The work will never hug you back.
Exactly. So it's not to say don't work. It's not to say that hard work isn't important. It is important. But just like anything, just like a budget that we have, we don't want to give all of our monetary money to one budget line item. We also don't want to give all of our time to one specific line item in your life too. Have some diversity. That way, if and when something falls through, you have the other things in your life to hold you up too. It's a beautiful analogy for finance in general. You want to diversify. So I say the same thing for diversifying your time.
Wealth as diversification beyond just financial assets.
Absolutely. Yep. Funny for a finance show, but
Well, I think, it's interesting because obviously you and I work in the world of personal finance.
Yes.
But so often you realize that these discussions really weave more towards unpacking what our expectations are, what the frameworks are that we have for living. That, in our culture, finance, money is like centered as the primary tool for achieving these things.
Yes.
Which, it's a capitalistic society. Of course, that is the primary tool that the primary lever that many of us have. But so often these conversations, I feel like I'm realizing, okay, it becomes about philosophy at a certain level, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Personal philosophy too. And life experiences for what you've experienced in your life or what your parents experienced. And then you glommed from that and said, wow, I don't want to do that again,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Or I do want to do that again. I liked what they did. It's personal.
Yeah. Putting the personal in personal finance.
There you go.
You're a podcast host. You have your own show, and you've interviewed many, many people. Do you feel like there are sort of themes that are coming up recently that are striking you? Is there anything that you've come across that you feel like, oh man, people are starting to talk about this thing. I want to pull on this thread a bit more.
Yeah, I would say one thing that consistently gets talked about all of the time, whether it's today or 10 years from now, is just the advice that always comes through is just paying attention to where the money's going and how to utilize it in the best fashion based on your personal values, your family values. If you can think about that and analyze that, you'll be ahead of so many people and help your personal life go in a great direction. Now, topically timely things that I've been hearing about a lot, which is either exciting or scary, however you want to think about it, is just AI in general, because it's everywhere and it's going to completely change the landscape of everything in our lives, I believe, over the next 1 to 10 years. And it's already happening. So those are exciting conversations, and they're more around, how we get things done as a society or even as a small business owner. and then also how that changes the landscape of work in the future, whether that be in corporate America or anywhere else. So I think about it from a generational wealth standpoint too of I've got a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old. How do I teach them to prepare for the future of work? And what does work even look like in 10 years with the advance of AI? So I don't have an answer for that, but I was just talking to my wife about this in the kitchen just a moment ago. Like, I think the reflex for the education system, or at least public education, will probably be like, hey, don't use ChatGPT, that's cheating. Or, don't use that as cheating. I would love to, push back on that and say, the kids that don't know how to use AI over the next 5 years are going to be behind. So how can we incorporate that in a non-cheaty kind of way where they can say, hey, the people who know how to manage and access AI tools in the future are going to be the leaders. So anybody who's just saying that's something I don't need that, that's cheating or whatever. It's like, how do we use that to integrate and grow? And I think that's a great way to something that's got to feed into the education system somehow.
Yeah. The quote that I heard the other day that seems to sum this up is, your job isn't going to be taken by AI. Your job's going to be taken by someone who's using AI.
Exactly.
Right? Like it just becomes a new tool to harness, or tool set to harness. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's going so fast
that
it's, these waves of technology, whether it's, I'll probably age myself, whatever, internet, cell phone, the ability to connect fast on a laptop and get work done. These are things that have felt like they've been like 5-year, 10-year kind of things. Like AI seems to be like 1 month. Like, what has changed in a month from where the tool was yesterday? It's going fast.
Yeah. It seems like you're sort of in this unique position where like you're sort of living a lot of people's dream of, you're like a part-time content creator. You have this audience that you're leveraging to essentially support your life, and you get to do that in a way where you get to talk about the thing that like is fascinating to you and is interesting, that you're like spending your time sort of chewing on. And one of the things that they talk about AI replacing is those of us, and I'm in the same boat, those of us who are like spending our time doing knowledge work and content creation. And I'm wondering if you feel like personally, in the context of marriage, kids, and money, that like this is just going to like free up another 5 hours of your week, or whether this is something that you start to go like, oh man, I'm going to have to figure out how to shore myself up against what might be the onslaught of a bunch of automated, digitally created talking heads talking about
I think it's a little bit of both. Absolutely. I'm inspired by it to create efficiencies in the work that I'm doing and support what I'm doing so I can help more families with financial education. And then at the same time, I'm like, wow, complete industries are being wiped away. I was just interviewing a woman who was a travel blogger for 5 years and did really well. And it allowed her to travel around the country with her spouse and child. And they made money on affiliate marketing through Amazon affiliates and AdSense or whatever, ads through their websites. And then all of a sudden with the Google AI changes, it went from like $7K a month to $1K. Like, because you're fed up on Google now with the AI answer, as opposed to maybe that blog that would tell you all about their great vacation and the tools that they used on their vacation to keep their kids, distracted. And here's some Amazon links to buy those things.
Right.
So things like that are spooky.
Yeah.
So I think you have to continue to pivot and be open to change and realize that diversification, even in your solopreneur venture, is a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Inspired and scared. I guess that sums up AI for me in general.
I don't think you're alone in that one. Man, Andy, I'm enjoying this conversation so much. I recognize that we're nearly out of time, but it's my understanding that if the listeners are enjoying this conversation as much as I am, and we want to hear more from you, that you're on the verge of publishing a book. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I have a new book out called Own Your Time. It's available for pre-order right now. It comes out in January of 2026, but it just came out on Amazon and Barnes & Noble for pre-order. And it's a lot of the conversation that David and I have had right now, everybody. It's about our journey from a negative $50,000 net worth as we started our marriage together to well over $1 million, and the freedom that we've created as a family all at the same time, including stories from people that I've interviewed on my podcast who have done the same thing. So the goal is to inspire families who want to create time freedom for themselves and the 10 steps to do that. So yeah, again, own your time.
Incredible. Well, we'll make sure we have a link to that in the show notes and on the page for this episode. Andy Hill of Marriage, Kids, and Money, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, David.
All right, that's our conversation with Andy Hill. Daniel, I'm curious if anything stood out to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating how Andy had the clarity to recognize when enough was enough. The whole story is really about questioning the assumption that more is always better. And what else stood out to me was his willingness to prioritize present moment family experiences over theoretical future wealth accumulation. It's like avoiding that perpetual optimization trap that a lot of people in this generation fall into.
Yeah, and he didn't adapt to changing economic realities by like working harder or chasing higher returns. It's like he adapted by fundamentally redefining what success looked like for him and his family, like choosing presence over productivity, or time with his kids over some sort of like corporate ladder climbing. I feel like his approach to coast fire, which he talked about, suggests that there might be some wisdom in sort of stepping back from that feeling that we need to constantly be optimizing.
Yeah, and speaking of optimizing, it's not just a one-size-fits-all plan, right? It's not some guru saying, here's one, strict path. It's, not just focused on financial metrics. It's thinking about generational wealth, thinking about AI's impact, time diversification, looking beyond traditional financial planning frameworks. And if you're focused on doing something like that, and accumulating just wealth and nothing else, you might miss out on the very experiences that you're trying to work towards.
Yeah. It's fascinating to see folks like Andy who are willing to sort of challenge these conventional wisdoms about money, about time, about, adapting our lives in ways that feel, like sustainable, not just profitable. And, I don't think you have to go about it alone when you're thinking of these kinds of trade-offs. Sometimes having conversations with folks who are also thinking like this about like what we actually want from our money can be as valuable as the strategies themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot. Community is really what drives it all. Community with people that are on the same path towards financial independence, people that are doing similar deals, real estate being so person oriented, and wealth being so personal. That's what conversations like this are just all about.
Exactly. And speaking of conversations and communities, if you're listening to this and you found the discussion useful, please, by all means, share this with someone in your community who you think might benefit from hearing Andy's perspective on redefining success. I feel like his insights about optimizing for time rather than just money are worth starting conversations around. It feels like sometimes the most valuable insights come from people who've questioned fundamental assumptions about how we're supposed to live and work.
And of course, the same thing, which is if you like this podcast, this conversation, again, share with a friend, pass it along. The best thing you can do is just spread the knowledge and get the word out there. And we appreciate you hopping on with us to hear that conversation. Thanks for joining Multiple Perspectives, and we'll catch you next time.